let's move on to a topic which is a bit more serious and one that we need to address. Really, it's been in the news the last few days, and that is Essex County Cricket Club were fined for admitting use of racist language and systemic racist behaviour over a period of time, historical, so roughly around about 2000 to 2010 was the period that was covered. But before that, just a week before that or so, they were docked points in the county championship because one of their batters had a bat that was slightly too wide. Feroz Kushi got done for having a bat that was too wide, and they got deducted points, which effectively ended any chances they had of winning the county championship. When you look at those two punishments, what does it say about how seriously English cricket takes racism, even after all that's happened?
Well, it tells you in action everything that I've been saying, and I continue to say. The English cricket, the ECB, the infrastructures of the game, the PCA, everyone is talking a great game at the minute. Every press release, we're going to be the most inclusive sport, etc., etc., etc. And they'll keep talking about it, but ultimately you get judged on your actions. And this, again, in a series of actions, this is another action that tells you when it actually gets to it, they take the path of least resistance. I'll ask you. You know my opinion. Everyone knows my opinion, right? And I'll go into a bit more detail around the Essex stuff, which is not as much known, which I can share. But let me ask you, right? How do you think that looks? You're go and have a conversation tomorrow with someone and put it to them and say, oh, well, you got knocked 12 points for a bat being slightly too big. First, I think it was one of the first few games of the season. I'm not saying that that's right. And then for systemic racism, the use of the N word, the use of the P word, terrorist, bomber, curry muncher, and not once, not twice, systemic use, right? And you didn't dock them points. And also, up until one journalist, Lizzie Ammon from the Times, sort of actually mentioned that, up until then, most people were actually all right with it. So we're in that phase, which happens all the time, which has happened in the past, where people are bored, everyone wants to believe the institution, and the institution is running its propaganda. English cricket is genuinely, in some situations, from the stuff that I know, trying to PR their way out of it, and they'll get charities who will support them and their PR. They'll get their cheerleaders, which they've got left, right, centre, because sadly, the reality is, Matt, you throw a bit of money at people and everything goes out the window, and that's where we're at with racism. But, question back to you. What would you tell me? What do you think?
Yeah, I actually, me, I basically would always give cricket the benefit of the doubt because I think there are some good people, and I always thought that cricket didn't have as big a problem as some other sports. That was the way I looked at it. But actually, what I will say is, I look at, say, football, which I think has some problems which it hasn't addressed, right? And football, they had a very similar issue, right? Which was you had, it was Enzo Fernandez, Chelsea captain, who gets videoed singing a racist song, gets made captain by Chelsea, doesn't get a suspension or anything like that. A couple of weeks later, Yves Bissouma of Tottenham, different clubs, but he gets caught doing laughing gas, inhaling a balloon, and he gets a one-match ban and gets told that he's got to build trust, and your trust is broken, it's going to take months to do that, and all this kind of stuff. So very similar situation. And actually, this cricket situation, the Essex thing, has really changed the way I look at it, because I now think, well, cricket needs to really look at itself, because it can't say, all right, well, this, other sports are worse than us and all that. It's exactly the same as what's going on in football. And the the absolute irony of it, how someone cannot see that you give a points deduction for the size of someone's bat, and you give a paltry little fine for systemic racism. It just blows my mind that you have these two things alongside each other, and that's allowed to happen because it's now obvious. It's now obvious, really, isn't it, that there isn't, as Darren Lewis said to us, do you remember in the podcast a few weeks ago on football, he said, football has shown there is no fight against racism. And I think cricket is going down that path at the moment. Where's the fight against racism?
Absolutely, and that's why I asked you the question, Matt, because I know you like to give the benefit of the doubt. You've got a different sort of way of looking at this stuff than I have, and that's why I asked you the question. And it's infuriating. I'll be honest with you, it's infuriating because after everything that's happened, and everyone comes out of the woodwork and goes, "Oh, we're going to be different. We're going to be." You've got non-exec directors, left, right, centre, up and down the country, and then something happens, and everyone just goes, "Oh, pretend like they've not seen it or they're not involved." There's so much I could share in this space, so much I could share, but it just feels like you're just banging your head against the wall because, in reality, this fight, there's a bigger fight to make the perpetrators into victims and involve them back in the game than there is to fight racism. And let's now go into the Essex stuff in a bit more detail. The Essex stuff is arguably, some of the stuff is arguably worse than the stuff happened at Yorkshire, and that's a good effort. The consistent use of the M word, the P word, the curry muncher, these, I mean, it was systemic as it comes, right? They had an independent investigation where a lot of people gave evidence to, but no one's ever heard of any detail of that investigation. Now, I can't believe I'm sort of saying Yorkshire should feel hard done by. They shouldn't. But you think of the onus that was put on Yorkshire to release the report, to act, etc., etc. And the Essex stuff is just meandered in the background because it's just been handled in to protect the institution. There are individuals who use this language, who are current players, not just current players, who are involved in some leadership positions around the country, and there is coaches involved that are coaching kids right now, but no one knows. Now, you tell me how that is right. You take a different offence or different type of abuse, you need to let their employers know. But no, we need to protect. The perpetrators. That's cricket's line. I could go into lots of detail with this, and I know people get bored of me, Matt, and I'm fine with it. I'm absolutely fine with it. I'm really at that stage where now, I've sort of gone, crack on. Your actions will keep showing people, because you can handle it in a comms perspective, which is how it's been handled. The other thing is, what do you think it says about the ECB, the CDC, and the PCA that the lads who were the victims in this refused to play any part in the ECB process?
Why didn't they?
Well, they sent a letter to the ECB making it very clear the reason that they weren't playing a part in it is because the way I was treated and the way other people who have come forward have been treated. And arguably, if there's one thing I reflect back on and regret is being part of that ECB process, because it's given the ECB a chance to go, look at us, we're great. Whereas in the background, I know exactly, what the individuals think. You tell me, we're the most inclusive sport. We're the most inclusive sport. There's so much covert racism that is continuing right now from the hierarchy of the game.